Well, how is everybody tonight? Hope you didn't eat too much, make you sleepy. That puts more pressure on me. So, now if I eat too much, that's really a problem. It's one thing to nod off when you're in the quote audience, another thing when you're speaking. So, I've had a lot of things happen, but that's one of them that hasn't happened. Okay. Well, I'm glad you're back. We're continuing our deep dive into serving others. I hope already in the first two sessions you've learned some things that you did not know already, so that your knowledge base about serving others is already beginning to expand. And I believe that as that continues to happen, as your knowledge about serving continues to grow, your desire to serve and your experience of serving will be enhanced as well. So that's a lot of what we want to accomplish here. So this is session 3. So the first thing I want to do, as we have done in the last couple of weeks, and we'll do to some extent each time, is just a short review of what we've talked about so far. One of the reasons I do that is obviously for those who may not have been here last week and need to kind of get caught up from the previous week or maybe at all. The other is this study is designed somewhat to build on the previous sessions. So what we talked about in the first week, we're building on for this the second and now the third, and that will continue as we go forward. So, by way of review, we talked in the first session about power, what that is. I offered here my own definition of power, not from Webster, but power is the ability to make things happen. The things can be good or bad. I suppose they could be neutral as well, but it's kind of hard to find much neutral in there. We have touched on, but we'll touch on it, deal with it in much greater depth, about serving others being a powerful change agent, particularly in the next couple of weeks. We will focus on more specifically how that is the case, how it does bring about change, positive change, of course. And then we also talked about quiet power. And I just remind you of a quote that I included in the first session: never assume that loud is powerful and quiet is weak. Some of the things that have no sound or no normal impact that you associate with power are very powerful. And we talked about some of those in the past. And the whole point of that discussion is for each of us to begin to think how it is that we have available to us power that we can use, particularly in the realm of serving others. Now, last week, we focused on some things that Jesus said about serving others. We looked at the passage in Luke 4, where Jesus spoke in the synagogue. He read from Isaiah, then he said, "This scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." So he focused on serving others as in the announcement that he made there in Nazareth in the very early part of his ministry. I said last week, I'll say it again, he handpicked that passage because it described what he was going to be doing in his public ministry. And that passage says that he came to help people who need to be helped: the oppressed, the blind, the poor. And so that gives us a pretty clear signal of what he was about. And then we also looked at a passage in Matthew, the time when the mother of James and John came to Jesus and said, how about letting my boys be your lieutenants? And Jesus said, oh, you don't understand. That's not what this is about. And it was in that passage that he said, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. And so he reaffirms his role as a servant, as what he is about is to come to serve. And then we spent a fair amount of time looking at the John 13 passage where Jesus washed the disciples' feet. And I don't have time to review all of that. Don't need to. But we looked at all the different things that were coming together in the upper room when Jesus met with the disciples. How his ministry was culminating, the plan to get rid of Jesus by the Jewish leaders was coming to a head, and all of this was the disciples were there to observe Passover, and there were certain expectations. All of this was happening at the same time, and it was in that context that Jesus chose to do the humble thing of washing the disciples' feet. And then he said, now you do the same thing. So these are just examples. There are others we've noted last week of how Jesus gave serving such a high priority. We didn't look at that material last week, and we don't even mention it again this week because there's a lot of debate about that. There really isn't. I mean, even people who don't go to church, maybe even people who wouldn't consider themselves to be followers of Jesus, know enough about Jesus to know that he's about serving others. You get all kinds of people asking, what would Jesus do? And about as often as not, that's a reference to being kind and compassionate and helpful and those kinds of things. So there's no debate about that. Even so, we need to see how bullseye it is. You know what a target has a bullseye, but then it has rings around it, and the goal is to hit the bullseye, whether you're shooting a rifle or throwing darts or whatever it is. What Jesus did was to put serving others in the bullseye. Does that make sense? Okay. That's probably enough to say about that. Now, in each one of these sessions, we're going to look at different biblical passages that have to do with the priority of serving others. We're still in the Old Testament here. We haven't got to the New Testament yet, other than the passages we looked at last week. So in Proverbs, we see where it says, do not, this is really small print, do not withhold good from those whom it is due when it is in your power to act. I chose that because of the appearance of the word power in there. We've already talked about that in Proverbs 3. Then also in Proverbs, when you are generous to the poor, you are enriched with blessing in return. We're going to come back to that as we get into what we're going to be talking about tonight. And then one other passage from Proverbs, this from chapter 31. Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy. So we're told in these verses that we are to fight for justice and fight against injustice. I will say, without going into a lot of discussion about it right now, that an advanced way of serving people in need is to look for the causes that put them in need and begin to do what we can to eliminate those causes. So, Here's what I'm saying. We can, in serving someone in need, we can come across someone who is hungry. They don't have enough food to eat. So we can go and get some food and take it to them. We have met their need. We have served them, no question. Well, what if we sat down and talked with them and said, why is it you don't have enough food? Well, maybe it's because they don't have enough income. There are lots of people like that, believe it or not. And so as that conversation might go a little bit deeper, we might say, well, why don't you have enough income? Well, I lost my job. Well, what if you got another job? What if I helped you to find a job? Would that eliminate this problem that you have about not having the money that you need to buy food? Well, yes, it would. And so that's going another step. Well, suppose they got fired from their job because of something that they were accused of doing, but they didn't do. So they are the victims then of injustice. And so really to get involved in that situation might require helping to connect that person with a lawyer or someone else who might be able to get that situation straightened out for them. So I'm just trying to help you to see a little bit more about how sometimes our serving can, it doesn't often happen this way, but it can lead us to look upstream from the present need and see what's happening up there that is causing what we see in front of us to happen. So I think that's part of what Proverbs 31 says, and we are called to do. Okay, so tonight we're going to begin to look at the benefits of serving others. We begin with the benefits that we derive from serving others. Okay? And then we will move in the next couple of sessions to the benefits that accrue to the people, what it is we are in fact doing for other people when they are on the receiving end of serving. So, there are some quotes about how happiness is produced as the result of serving others. I've got several in the book. I just lifted out 2 or 3 of them. Booker T. Washington said, "Those who are the happiest are those who do the most for others." A fellow by the name of Carl Reland said, "In the same degree you are helpful, you will be happy." And then I like this the best, the Chinese proverb that says, if you want to be happy for an hour, take a nap. I do that a lot. Now, I'm not asking for a show of hands or anything. I know there would be some. If you want to be, well, let me get back here. I'm sorry. If you want to be happy for a day, go fishing. If you want to be happy for a year, inherit a fortune. But if you want to be happy for a lifetime, help somebody. That would be, except for the fact that how long it is, be a great T-shirt, wouldn't it? So, what I want to do is to kind of make this a little bit more personal and so forth. So Terry Lethco has agreed to come up with me, and come on up here, Terry. And we're just going to have a little conversation about serving. I've asked her to do this because she and Gary and others are involved on a weekly basis.
Yes.
And I keep forgetting the name of Care First. Care First. So I'm going to give you the microphone, and they will.
You didn't tell me that there's this spotlight that's
Oh,
right at you.
Oh, well. That's so you can't see the eyes of the people out there when they're not off.
Okay.
All right, so I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions about your experience in serving in Care First. Why do you keep doing it? You've been doing it for a good while now, right?
Right. About 4 years.
4 years. Every week?
Every week. The only time we have taken off every year the week between Christmas and New Year's,
Right.
you know, during that holiday time, because we have to have enough volunteers
Yeah.
to serve.
Sure.
And so, but other than that, and then last year we changed our weather policy. At one point, we started off, if it got below 30 degrees, then we wouldn't be here. But we then were looking at the thermostat all day long. And so we decided that really, our friends are hungry when it's cold. And it's just, they are outside already in the cold. It's just our inconvenience of being outside and feeding people. And we thought that was not enough to stay away. And so unless there is snow or ice on the roads, it wouldn't be safe for someone to come down the hill to come under Trentham Hall. So that's our only exception.
Yeah, they probably end up in the river.
Yeah, they probably would.
So
They probably
ask you
would.
again then, why, that is a long time.
Yeah.
So you clearly are deeply motivated to do this.
We
So
are.
why, we know that you want to help people, but what is it that you get out of it that makes you want to keep doing it?
It's changed my life. And I want to say, I didn't know what these questions were going to be. So, all right, now I'm like sitting here going, gosh, I have to think about this. Because it is an opportunity to show to people that they're cared about. And there are lots of ministries downtown showing people that we care. But we've been told many times that here they feel like that they are truly cared about, because we want to, you know, our most important thing is when people come, we want them to feel welcome. And so we tell them that they're welcome. We tell them that we care. We tell them that we want, you know, how can we help you? And to see people who don't hear very often that they matter, to have for an hour just the hot coffee, the food, the fellowship that they have here, it just does something to your heart. It just is. It's just been amazing. So I get more out of it than they do.
Okay. What more do you get out of it than they do, if you can define that?
I feel like that gives me a sense of peace, you know, that I'm not ignoring something that I know is a problem. It gives you joy when people, you know, come up and hug you and say that they're happy to be here, that it is the best hamburgers in town, that it, you know, that people, that you can pray with someone. I mean, you feel God's presence in a situation like that, where you are praying with them and trying to help them just have a good meal. I can't fix most of their problems, like you said. It's like there's many things that you can do, but you know, we had 62 people last night. We've had as many as 140 was our biggest night. You can't help someone, each individual, but you can try to greet them and make them feel valued. And so that in turn, you know, I'll feel like that we've invited God here, and we've kind of been in the presence of God at work.
Right.
And that's just an incredible feeling.
Okay.
You mentioned something about the group activities that they engage in when they're here. Told me about that?
Oh,
Okay, so for the benefit of those who on the streaming, and I'll try to recap. George is asking about group activities that the group involves in.
Saying that they would group together and they decided who should come to this meeting and who shouldn't come, who they wanted to come.
oh yeah, they're very select. I mean, they take ownership in it also, so they know who are quote unquote the troublemakers in town, and they kind of self-police themselves
Yeah.
on what we have and who comes, and so
They don't want some of those people to mess up a good thing,
they don't.
to put it
Yes.
bluntly.
Yes, yes,
Okay, that is interesting.
yeah,
So they're even contributing what they
They
can
are.
to help it be successful.
they are.
So obviously, you get a lot, you and Gary and the others who work in this get a lot of joy out of
do.
doing this.
We do.
Have you ever thought about why that is? I mean, obviously, like you said, conveying to someone a sense of value that they're genuinely cared about, particularly people who are told in many, many other ways and many other times they are not valued.
Right.
I mean,
Very much so.
Yeah.
Every day.
talking about the homeless people, of course, they're kind of the lepers of our culture here, in a way. So, have you ever thought about why it is that this makes you happy?
Not really, but talking about that situation, I can tell you that 4 years ago, it was Gary who wanted to come. And so I supported him in that. But back then, that was, we had maybe 10 or 15 people. So this beautiful woman came up to me, and I was kind of standing to the side. I wasn't interacting. And she came up and she said, homeless people aren't bad people. And I said, I know that, I know that. She said, well, I just, I've just seen you standing over here. And I said, well, I'm so sorry, and she said, well, I just wanted you to know that sometimes it is a bad decision that was made by the person, but sometimes it's the bad decision that someone you love made. And in my case, it was my husband who made a terrible decision, and we lost our home. And they've gotten a divorce now. And I don't know why she didn't have more family that came around her. I don't know that. But it just kind of hit me in the face that they're just people who had something terrible happen, and I could have had that same situation. I could have had poor health. I could have, Gary's had poor health. It could have happened to anybody. Just one bad decision in high school, one bad decision at any point in time. Mm-hmm. And they're just people that want to be loved. And so to be able to do that has just been able to change my mind about a lot of things. And so I tell everybody who volunteers, look them in the face, look someone in the face and say, we're glad you're here. And give them value, gives you value. If you give someone value, you get value. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
I think that's what Proverbs, that middle verse that we read just a minute ago, you get a blessing, That's really what we're talking about.
Right.
So, okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time and willingness to
Oh,
do it without knowing the questions ahead of time. Thank you. Thank you even more so, Terry, for what you and the others are doing. You make the church look good. I know that's not your goal, but that's part of what you do. They know they're coming to First Baptist, and they know that at least some people, and the fact is a lot more, care enough for them to help make that happen. So that's a good thing. So I thought it might be good to just have that, let you hear. One of the things that I see that makes the difference between this woman, for example, whose story you alluded to, and most of us here in this room, in that if we were to have a very similar thing happen to us, we probably would not end up homeless because we have resources and they don't. That's really what it boils down to in a lot of cases. And whereas we may be thankful for our resources, we need to be aware of the fact that other people don't. So let's dive into why does this make us feel good? Because there's a spiritual dimension I want you to get here. In the book I talk about the happiness trifecta. Insert a little basketball lingo, or maybe it's hockey. Is it hockey? They use that term in hockey too. Anybody here know anything about hockey? I don't. Okay, whatever. So, I say in the book, and I say here tonight, you and I are hardwired to serve others. First, biologically. So what I'm saying is, the Creator God put us together in such a way that we are rewarded when we serve others as an incentive to get us to do it more. So let's talk about why we feel good when we serve. One of those is it makes us feel happy. We feel good. There is a thing called the helper's high. It's just like, or it operates a lot like a runner's high. I know all of the runners in the room know what I'm talking about. It's when you exercise, your body creates endorphins that lifts your mood. When I go out riding on my bicycle, and I still do that occasionally, not as much as I used to, but I still do, I'm tired a little bit, but I feel good for a while. My mood is better. And some of you will know what that's about at least. The same kind of thing happens literally. Literally, it happens physically because it has been discovered by medical science that 3 hormones are released in the brain when we serve others: oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. And they lift our mood. That's part of the reason why we feel good when we serve. Where do those hormones come from? Are they not just as much a part of our body as our heart or lungs or liver or any other part? God made us that way. And it's as though He was saying, I'm creating you for the purpose of serving others. That's pretty clear to me. And I think it can be convincing if we'll let ourselves think about that a little bit. So, in addition to, I don't want to forget this, in addition to the lifting of the spirits, those same hormones tend to suppress cortisol. You possibly have heard about cortisol. It's a negative kind of hormone or reaction within the brain, causes us to feel bad or depressed or that kind of thing. So you see, the good is lifted and the bad is suppressed when we serve others. So that's why I say we're hardwired to serve biologically. There are, in fact, some definite and considerable health benefits we derive from serving others. There are those who have studied this, and I make reference to some of that, tell about some of that in the book. I don't have time to get into so much tonight, but I'll just share some of these. See if this is not impressive to you. Serving others reduces mortality by 22%. That doesn't mean we're not going to die. It just means we're about 22% less likely to die earlier. It lowers the risk of high blood pressure by 29%, reduces the risk of inflammation, which is the cause of a lot of medical issues, by 17%. It reduces the likelihood of hospitalization by 38%, or to put that the way it was stated in the source that I cited in the book, people who serve others are 38% less likely to need to be hospitalized. Now, it seems to me that when we make application for health insurance, there ought to be something in there about, do you serve others? Don't you think? Don't you think that would bring our rates down a little bit? They haven't caught on to that, but they should. Ned, can you take care of that for us? Get the insurance company. Okay, good. All right. Once again, without hopefully belaboring the point, it's a benefit to us much more than we realize. And God made it happen. So continuing to talk about the happiness trifecta, the second part of that is we are hardwired to serve others emotionally. So serving others gives us a sense of purpose. Terry, I'm guessing that you and Gary and the other volunteers there have a clear sense of purpose about what you're doing, and that keeps you doing it. I think there's no other explanation for doing something every week for 4 years, and who knows how far it will go. That's a lot. That's a lifetime compassion ministry right there. Yeah, same reason. Gives them a sense of purpose because it is making a difference in the lives of other people. So purpose is extremely important. We talked a little bit about that. We were talking about the power of serving. Purpose is that sense of this is what I'm supposed to do. It could be something as strong as this is what God made me for. That's another way of saying it. But it's that sense of, this is what I'm supposed to. I told you the story about when I preached in that little church outside the Army base and how terrible a sermon it was, but I felt a sense of purpose about that made a difference in the rest of my life. And perhaps you have had a similar kind of experience. If not, I hope you do, because it's very rewarding. It's just very, very satisfying. So purpose and happiness are related. They're not the same thing, but they are very closely related. They're almost two sides of the same coin. When you're functioning out of your purpose, it makes you happy. And when you're happy, it usually has something to do with the fact that you're involved with something having to do with your purpose. Purpose and self-esteem. Terry was talking about giving value, extending value to the people who come to their ministry on Tuesday evenings. Everybody needs to have that. Every single human being, no exceptions, needs to know that they are cared for. And it's sad when we think about how many, many, many people in our world don't have that feeling at all and don't know what it's like to be cared for at all, period. Well, when we have a sense of purpose, we feel better about ourselves, and who doesn't want to feel better about themselves? So let me, I put up on the screen about Team Rubicon. Has anyone here heard of that? I'm sorry? Oh, not until you read the book. Okay. So there was a Marine, a former Marine, who had been involved in some of the Middle Eastern conflicts, Afghanistan and Iraq and that kind of thing. And when he got out of the Marines, he kind of wandered around aimlessly a little bit, like a lot of veterans. We've heard those stories, because the military is a structured environment for good reasons. And when they leave that, they feel a little bit lost until they can plug in somewhere else and find something in civilian life that provides that sense of structure. Jake was sort of wandering around. He had a job, but he didn't have a sense of purpose. But he heard about on television one night one of the hurricanes that came through Haiti, and he decided, I'm going to do something about that. He called some of his other Marine friends, military vets, and they formed a small group, and they got on a plane and they went to Haiti. And they basically showed up and said, okay, we're here. We're here to help. And they did. Well, being military, they were doers, and they did help, but they didn't know that first time what they were doing, but they learned. So that the next time a disaster came up, called his friends, and they called some more, and a few more people went. And this kept up for a little while until they eventually formed Team Rubicon, which has been now recognized nationally and internationally as one of the most effective disaster relief organizations in the world. And all it is giving people who need a purpose something to do that is in the way of helping, serving other people when their lives have come apart because of whatever disaster they've experienced. I tell in the book that this was one of the things that really jumped off the page at me when I read his book. He had a friend by the name of Clay who was involved from time to time in Team Rubicon activities. But he never could shake his inability to get into civilian society and to feel, he just continued to fight depression in a really bad way. And Jake kept in touch with him. One evening, Clay called him and said, I need to come talk. And they came, and he was talking about taking his life. And Jake said, Clay, let me ask you something. He said, when do you feel like you have purpose in your life? And without hesitation, Clay said, when I'm doing TR, Team Rubicon stuff. That's when I feel like I have real purpose. And that's the best feeling I ever have. But when it stops, I kind of get back into some negative mindsets. That's how strong purpose is. And so if serving others gives us a sense of purpose, then that's worthwhile. Okay, let me move on. So the happiness trifecta means the three parts. We are hardwired to serve socially. Now, I don't think I have to make a long argument about the fact that we were created by God to be social beings. Anybody here would disagree with that? Now, there are a few exceptions. There are a few hermits in the world who don't seem to want to be with anybody, but that's not true for 99.999% of the people in the world. We need to be with other people. We need relationships, and that's because God made us in such a way that we have the capacity to talk, to hear, to enter into and interact with other people. It benefits us to do that with them. It benefits them to do it with us, and so forth and so on. It just makes life better. It just makes life better. One of the things that happens around these tables every Wednesday night happens on Sunday morning when you come to church. It happens in other places when we are with people. Relationships matter. And the fact of the matter is, we actually grow a little bit better in our relationships with people when we serve alongside them. And so, one of the things that I have said over the years, I heard somebody else say it, have no idea who it was, but I'll just give that, whoever that is out there, credit. Standing shoulder to shoulder is better than face to face. And what I mean by that is we literally build a little bit deeper relationship with someone when we work in serving others alongside them. I'm sure, Terry, with the volunteers, you folks have built really strong bonds there because you're serving together. What's more important about your being together is what you're doing for other people. And so you're not looking at yourself, you're not looking at each other so much as you are concentrating your energy and your efforts for other people. And so that's why I say our relationships grow more shoulder to shoulder than face to face. So when I train a church in how to do an operation inasmuch, I tell them that one of the benefits their church will derive, one of the benefits that individual members will derive from that is getting to know other people in the church. I said, now here's what's going to happen Sunday. And it happens right here at First Baptist, just like every other church. I've been in this business a long time, I know. You're going to come to church the same way you always do, for good reason. You're going to park most likely in about the same place you park every week, whether it's in the garage, across the street, or on the street, wherever it is. That's what you're going to do, because that's what you normally do. You're going to enter the building the same door. When you go to your Sunday school class, you're going to not only go to the same room, but you're going to sit in the same seat, George. The same one. Week after week. Am I right? Of course. And when you're a renegade, George. We know that. And when you go into the sanctuary, you're going to sit in the same pew there. I can tell where all of you sit, because I remember 5 years ago. Almost, not quite. So here's the thing. We surround ourselves, I'm just talking about church folk now, we tend to surround ourselves by the same people all the time. And those are the people we know. We know there are other people in the church. We may even know the names of some of them, but we don't really know them, because after all, they sit on the other side of the sanctuary. And we don't dare move from where we are to go over to that side to get to know them. But the point I'm making is when you get all mixed up when you do something like Operation Inasmuch, because you sign up for the project, and maybe some of those people from the other side of the sanctuary signed up for the same project, and lo and behold, you spend a day with people you didn't know before. So we've had any number of pastors whose churches have done that and said, you know, it boosted our whole fellowship, and that's the reason why. Because we need those relationships. Serving others is an enhancement, a boosting of the building of and nurturing relationships, and we certainly benefit from that. One of the sources I cite in the book is Marta Zaraska, a British lady who wrote, I was driving down the road one day and I listened to NPR, and she was being interviewed about her book. And the more I listened to her, the more I said, I got to have that book. And read it, and it furnished some material for this book. I included this quote because it speaks to what we're saying. The book is about longevity. She said, if you can do just one thing for your health and longevity, that thing should be to find a great partner and committing to the relationship. And then there is friendship, a close second when it comes to boosting your centenarian potential. That's how important relationships are. So, what we've said, the reasons we feel good when we serve are because of some things that are happening in our brain that we can feel, but we may not be so much conscious of it, other than the fact that we feel better. It enhances our sense of purpose, and it helps us to develop more meaningful, deeper relationships. So, I want to close out with a story, but this time I'm not going to tell the story. I've got a video that I want you to see, and while Seth gets that up and going, you can imagine that through the years in the Inasmuch ministry, we have heard many, many different stories about what involvement in that kind of serving has done for congregations, for individual believers, and so forth. So this story comes out of Sumter, South Carolina, and it involves one person who is still around and the other who is not. But it's one of the best stories I've ever heard. And Seth, if you've got it ready, y'all watch and listen and enjoy.
On dialysis, which I still is, so I decided to write my obituary. I just was done give up.
When I came here, I found a man who was near freezing to death, even though the home was fairly warm. I'll never forget my first look at him, because his hands were up inside an oven that was on in the burner's cherry red. He was shivering, and he had a woolly watch cap pulled down over his head. From that meeting, I discovered that here's where God had me to come. I like to think that God sent me here on a mission. I had told my church I wanted to serve others.
Joel came to us in the summer of 2008, really with a passion to serve others. And we had a helps ministry that really had kind of gone into a dormant state, and Joel came to us with a passion to revive that.
My social worker, Miss Becky, she goes out to drive church. So I was asking her, could she help me get the trailer underpinned and some heating?
Clay, our pastor, came across an article in a magazine and ripped it out and gave it to me and said, share this with Joel. And that article happened to be about Operation Inasmuch. And from there, it really just took off and exploded.
And they come, a whole group of them come.
We had a large group come to this site, as well as all over the city. Probably had 40 people out here at this site.
We had come here and discovered several water leaks, an issue with overpressurization on the water lines, all kind of things. Roosevelt, do you think you told me he had been, 3 years?
Oh yeah.
3 years with no running water in the trailer. After we fixed the water lines, we insulated the floor.
Yeah.
We put the underpinning around the trailer.
Yeah.
We got out here and got a garden started for him. Hauled out a lot of debris that accumulated over 20 years. Helped repair chicken coop. Built a little porch deck behind me here. Fixed the floor in that second bedroom there, which he says he may use now in the future because the other bedrooms may be a little colder in the winter, so he might move into a bedroom he didn't know he had until Inasmuch put it in there for him.
Can you tell me a little bit about the relationship that has developed between the Alice Drive congregation and Roosevelt now as a result of having come the first time, and some of the things from your point of view as a pastor at the church about some of the things that have happened there?
Okay. There's really been, as I said, a family relationship has formed between church members and Roosevelt.
Once I came and learned to know Roosevelt, I became friends with him.
Roosevelt does tremendous gardening starting in the spring all the way through the summer, and every 2 or 3 days in the summer he'll roll up with Joel in Joel's car, and they'll have a trunk full of vegetables, and nobody has to ask where they came from because they know they came from Rosie.
I'm over a couple, 3 times a week probably, and we do all sorts of things from taking care of his needs. You know, it might be nothing more than going to the ag center and picking up some chicken feed. I try and get him out now and again and go with me, so 2 of us will ramble around and do a little shopping, little doctor's appointments.
Mr. Joel them come and help me and turn my life back around. So I appreciate it, and the Lord helped me. The Lord sent them to me, and he went on from there. And I thank the Lord, and I thank Mr. Joe.
I don't think a whole lot needs to be said after that. My hope is that that story will just kind of deepen some of what's already been said about the power of serving others for those of us who serve, as well as the people we serve. Let's have a closing prayer. Father, thank you for Joel Singletary and Roosevelt and tens of thousands of other people that you have allowed us to help them to come together to experience in its fullest way the blessing that Proverbs talks about when it says we do for other people. It comes to us. Thank you for creating us in a way that we can feel joy and satisfaction and purpose when we allow ourselves to give some of our time, a little bit of our encouragement, whatever it is we can do to help somebody in front of us who has a need. Help us to look for and be alert to other opportunities. Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity just to talk about some of these things in depth, as we will continue to do in the coming weeks. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you all.